Hello, allies. Welcome to another episode of the Allied Heritage Report. Now, yesterday's episode, we touched base on the coronavirus and how dangerous it is, and um, that in fact that it has taken a life. But today I've been looking at this virus. I've been looking deeper into it, and I noticed something that is too obvious we're not pointing out. Now, I know each virus has its own strain. Each virus is different. We also need to realize that some of the viruses that have hit our world in history in recent times, the doctors have had a hard time fixing it or curing it because of the fact that we as a society need to remember one thing, allies. Organisms can evolve. Like bacteria and viruses and stuff like that, they are organisms, so they can evolve. So eventually, over time, the antibiotics that we do have, the organisms are becoming immune to. So that's why we have to develop more antibiotics. I'm not saying that this coronavirus is ever going to be uncurable. That's not what we're saying here at the show. But what I am saying that I'm finding similarities. I'm seeing the same monster as I've seen through history books and everything else. Now, today, I want to point out some more deadly diseases like this that have hit our planet. It took time for them to find a cure for, but eventually they found a cure. Now, some of these may be just like the coronavirus, some of them may be worse. But, in order to find out, we got to go through it. Now, I do want to stress again, this coronavirus is deadly. This coronavirus is unpredictable. Doesn't matter who you are. If it's going to hit you, it's going to hit you. Just be safe out there and be prepared. That's one of the things we love to do at the show is we love to protect society. We like to help people. And if I can help you by giving you information that could prevent the next global epidemic or pandemic, then I'm going to try. Now, when I said similarities, the coronavirus in China alone has already killed at least 73,000 people and over. Korea's it's taken out 4. Each one of the Middle East countries, it's taken at least one victim. So, it's not really a global event just yet, but it's getting close. The numbers and the evidence is showing me that we are getting there. We are getting close to a pandemic. Now, there are suspicions, and I want to clarify something that I mentioned yesterday. There are suspicions in Oregon that the coronavirus might be there. I found evidence yesterday stating it was there. But I cannot be 100% sure that Oregon is affected because I found another headline stating that they haven't found any cases yet. So, once I do figure it out, you allies in Oregon, you will know about it. Now, let's get into today's topic. Today, I want to read you off some of the diseases and the pandemics that I have found that kind of remind me of the coronavirus. And the first one that I came up with, okay, was the third cholera pandemic. Now this pandemic, it lasted from 1852 to 1860. Now, for those of you who don't know what cholera is a bacterial infection that is mainly contracted through food and water. Okay, a recent cholera outbreak in Haiti made headlines, but the largest cholera outbreak known to mankind is the third cholera outbreak. Now, I'm assuming since it was the third, there was two more before this. Now, this cholera outbreak, it originated in India, and it spread far beyond its borders, killing as many as 23,000 people in Britain alone. Okay? So think about that. This coronavirus has already killed more people in China than the third cholera flu has in Britain. It's food for thought. Let's move on to the Asian flu pandemic of 1957. Now, the Asian flu sorry, can't talk tonight for some reason. Bed right. Now, let's try this again. The Asian flu pandemic of 1957. The Asian flu pandemic was an outbreak of avian influenza that originated in China and spread worldwide. The estimated death rate was 1 to 2 million people. Now, this is telling me here that this ain't the first time China has had some kind of pandemic outbreak. This Asian flu clarifies that this coronavirus may be just the second or third. Now, there's a lot of speculation when it comes to the coronavirus that this may also be a attempt on biological terrorism or biological warfare. Let me just say this. I'm not totally backing the story of it, but I do want to say that a lot of the information is leading to this. But we need to realize one thing. Forget all the speculations. Forget all the theories that we have. Let's focus on the fact that people are dropping like flies. People are dying. And they need our help. Now, the third one, this one really did remind me of this coronavirus. But this is far different. The typhus fever in World War I, which was in 1945. Now, this disease is spread by lice. So head lice would spread it from one person to another. In the war conditions, there were poor sanitation that probably led to a greater dissension of lice, which means that the transmission of typhus was more prevalent. During World War I, typhus caused 3 million deaths in Russia alone. Now, if you look back in history, back to World War I, typhus killed more soldiers than bullets did. Because they would go over to fight for war and they'd contract the flu and they would die overseas. Now, here's a disease, and I'm going to try my best to pronounce this. I'm not so good with foreign words, so just bear with me. Coco Lit Zilli. It was an epidemic in 1576. Now, this disease refers to millions of deaths in the territories of New Spain, which to this present day we call Mexico. We used to be called New Spain. This disease refers to a collection of pests. The symptoms were very much the same as Ebola, but included a dark tongue, jaundice, and neck nodules. So this was like maybe a Ebola virus that was 10 times worse. Next one was the plague of Justinian, which was around 541 to 542 BC. This deadly pandemic affected the Eastern Roman Empire specifically and port cities along the Mediterranean Sea. This pandemic was so severe it killed off an estimated 25 million people and almost 13% of the world's populations. The plague returned in waves, but never as severe as this one. It was named after the Eastern Roman emperor at the time, who ruled the time, Narcissus of the limbs, as depicted in the image that I have here that I can't show because it's kind of graphic, so I will not show you. But it killed a lot of people. Now, this one was the Antonian plague. This was around 165 to 180 AD. This disease was also known as the plague of Galen. Now, this disease, okay, historians suspect that it could have been smallpox or measles that made it worse. This disease claimed almost up to 2,000 deaths per day. That was just in a day. So imagine how much it took for a year in Rome alone. The total death toll, okay, here you go, for a whole year, the total death toll was tallied at about 5 million people. That one right there kind of reminds me of what we're getting ready to face. I mean, you know, there's still questions that are unknown here. Like, you know, a lot of these diseases have certain targets. Like young people, teenagers, elderly, and everything. But this coronavirus, it doesn't seem to have a specific target. So anybody can be affected by this. Let's move on to the third plague pandemic. Okay, the third plague pandemic, also referred to as the modern plague, refers to a bubonic plague pandemic that started in the Providence in China. Over the next 20 years, it spread to Hong Kong and port cities around the world by rats that carried the infectious fleas responsible for this disease. It caused almost 10 million deaths. Now, the modern plague, I believe, if I read it right, they have found some kind of cure for it, or some way to subside it. So it's not really as deadly as it was back in 1855, but it's still a serious condition. Now this one here reminds me so much of the coronavirus. It's crazy. It's almost like a mirror image. And this is, you guessed it, the Black Death. This was around 1334. Okay. Also called the Great Plague. It originated in China and spread along trade routes to Europe, where it claimed nearly 60% of the European population, completely wiped out many towns. Now, from what I've read from the Black Plague, or the Black Death, sorry, it's sort of like the Black Plague kind of thing. You get like black spots and everything, and then you start losing your feeling in your body to where it starts to shut down. But it feels like a mirror image of the disease that we have this year. And this would have to be a close second for me. The Great Flu Epidemic of 1918. Now, let's think about the flu for a minute. We have medications for this now. We have vaccinations and everything for the flu. But think about this. Back in 1918, they didn't have the modern medicine that we have today. So, they had almost 800 people in the same room with the same problems. Okay, so the Great Flu Epidemic has been recorded as the most devastating epidemic in history, with a death toll of somewhere between 20 million and 40 million people. This disease killed more people than World War I. Now, the number one disease for me that keeps being pushed under the rug. Maybe we don't have the resources to find a cure for it, or maybe we just haven't found the right herbs. HIV and AIDS. Now, this is a pandemic, and it started in 1960, and it's still here. It's still here to the present. It is hard to determine when and where exactly HIV originated, but it is widely believed that it originated in the Democratic Republic of the Congo around 1920, when the disease was spread from chimpanzees to humans. Since the first cases of AIDS were reported in 1981, infection with HIV has grown to pandemic proportions, resulting in an estimated 65 million infections and 25 million deaths from this. Now, this disease is not a joke. And for those who think that you can just get this from sex, you cannot. You can also get it from blood. I think you can get it from saliva. I'm not so sure. But I'll look into that. But those are the ones that kind of remind me so much of this. Now there's two more that's not on this list that kind of make me think that it could be one of them situations. One of them being the swine flu. Now, this swine flu was very much deadly. The other is the Spanish flu. Now, that wiped out lots of people. Usually, I make this show 30 minutes. But tonight, I'm going to cut it short. I'm going to get into my final three thoughts because I think it's most important that people realize how deadly this is. 1, I cannot stress this enough. If you feel sick, go to the hospital. Let's see what's going on. 2, we now have a third disease that we don't really know anything about. The other two being HIV and cancer. And 3, if by chance you have contracted the coronavirus, you will be in all of our prayers. Hold everybody close. Use the support system that you have. For Allied Heritage Report, this is Javon Chandler.